Hi, and in this MadMapper tutorial, we're going to go over video buffers and why you might want to start incorporating them into your setup. And if you don't know what this is, I'm going to explain the process to you and also show you how to do it in MadMapper 5 in case you're still using that software. So let's get into it. Okay, so essentially a video buffer is going to be a pass-through layer. So let's say we're doing some sort of projection mapping and we have our main output, which is something that we're putting a bunch of content into, and we're creating all sorts of scenes and cues. And then we change locations, meaning maybe we go to a new site and we get the projector closer to the previous setup that we had, but things don't line up. Instead of going through and manually editing all your scenes and cues again, if you use a video buffer, you might save yourself some time. So let me show you a little bit more. So to do so, I'm gonna just have this be like my final output. So final output to projector. Okay, and then I'm going to use a video buffer, which is right here, this little icon. And this is essentially giving me a loopback. So whatever content goes into the video buffer is then going to be passed through and go on to my final output. And if you're in MadMapper 5, let's jump over there, and you're on the Outputs tab, let me get rid of this laser output. Let's just call this one my final output. And let's just create another projector and we'll call this one my video buffer layer. By default, when you create one of these, you have this publish internal loopback is already active. So I'm just going to disable the publish internal loopback on the final output. And then, for example, if I go over to the quads and I create a quad, so let's just make sure that you can see everything. I'm going to drag my final output to the right, so it's similar to this one. And video buffer is going to be on the left. Okay, great. So we're in quads. We're going to make this quad. We'll just scale it to the size of the final output. And when we select a source in media, we're going to scroll down to the bottom and we're going to choose this layer, which is going to be our video buffer layer. So now it's essentially passing through whatever is on the left side over to the right side. So if I create another quad, and this one will just add some sort of content to it, you'll see that what I have over here is being passed over there. And if I take a look at my input side, I can make sure that things are adjusted to the way that I want them. So let's just scale this up so it looks identical for the time being. Right, so now what's on the left is essentially being passed over to the right to some degree. And we can make adjustments to it. Let's go here, just shrink things down. Do this. If I'm on the other quad, I can make sure that it's scaled to the same size. There we go. Okay, so this one is going to be final output. And this one will be, we'll just call it layer 1 because it's the one we're working with. So this is how you do video buffers in MadMapper 5. Right, and now I'm going to go over to MadMapper 6 where I'm going to complete the rest of this tutorial. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. This one already has a video buffer layer, which means that it doesn't have a destination. If I select this, I can choose, out to a projector if I'm connected to one. In this case, its destination is essentially just looping back that content into MadMapper. So let's go over and do something similar. So let's create a quad. And we'll call this one our final output. And final output. And we'll make sure that this media is set to the video buffer layer. And then let's actually scale it up so it's more of like a 16:9 image, right? We want whatever is here to match whatever's here. So let's make a new layer and we'll just call this one square. And we'll choose this for the time being. I'm going to shrink this down. And I'm going to start mocking up my composition. So let's just say that we are making some sort of box shape. So as you can see, whatever's on the left is going to be on the right. So I'm just going to focus on the left for the time being. I'll just duplicate it. Let's angle it a little bit. Duplicate again. And here's our really lovely cube-like shape. So this is our final output. So that mapping over there looks great. Let's maybe make this cube look a little bit better and scale it up. Okay, so let's say we had a cube and we created a scene out of this content. So scene 1 is going to be this. Let's say that we change that content to something else. We create like another scene. We change that content to something else. We create another scene and save them. So now if we like step through these, you can see that there's 3 different scenes. For something as simple as this, I would actually recommend doing cues over scenes, and I'll go over that in a little bit. But a lot of people are used to making scenes, and a scene is essentially a snapshot of everything that's being saved. Everything that's going on in your project is being saved in that one scene, whereas a cue can get into individual parameters. So if we're just changing the content on this to something else, like so, we can drag this down and save that into a cue, and then it doesn't matter which scene we trigger, we can always change that content. So cues are extremely powerful once you wrap your head around the logic of how to use them. And let's go back here. So let's say that you've made this at your house, right? And this out of your projector looks perfect and your cube looks amazing. And now you take your projector to a friend's house and you go and set it up again and things just don't seem to line up. Well, instead of going through and manipulating all these different points across all these different scenes, which is also possible. So let me trigger this again. If I wanted to do something like that, I could select all these. I could click this record button. I could adjust them, and then I could stop the record button. And then in theory, it should update. So you see that they all have it. But instead of selecting all my scenes or even all my cues, let's say my project is significantly more complicated than something like this. Instead of manipulating the original output side, I can focus on this video buffer layer, and then I can start to just do something like on the final output, maybe I want to do some sort of mesh warping, and I enable that. And you can come in here and you can click generate grid, and we'll just do like a grid, and you can start manipulating things. Or one of my favorites, if I'm just going to enable this reset mesh, is I could just add a point. So I get in here and I say, this really needs to be the right, like a few inches. Let me just like drag that, and oh, did that make it look good? No, maybe I need to fix this corner now. I can come in here and adjust that one. And maybe this corner down here needs to go down just a little bit. And if I do that, and this looks correct at my friend's house, I didn't have to update everything else that was in my project. I just had to update one side. And if I right click on that, click output geometry, which is a good habit, just in case I accidentally trigger a scene and I lose that. Now that I've right clicked and copied that output geometry, I can always come back in here, right click and paste it. And if I click update scene, now that scene, let me choose a different one, has that new output geometry. So instead of changing your complicated mesh or project that took you forever to put together, you can just change something on the output side and using a video buffer, and that way you can quickly adapt your setup for whatever location you're in. So once again, instead of changing 3 different quads, I can just manipulate the one that's on the final output. And so another way, this is typically something that I do a lot more for multi-projector setup. So let's go back to here, and let's say instead of my video buffer being 1920 by 1080, it's actually 3 times that. So let's do some math, times 3. So we're at 5760, put that in. So, okay, my video buffer is now 3 times the size that it originally was. Let's move that down to here again. I'm gonna move the final output. So in this sense, maybe the final output is actually projector 2. And maybe I do that again. And this one will be projector 1. And then I do that again, and this one will be projector 3. So let's just organize these for anyone who might be OCD watching this video. So let's say I'm working with a 3 projector setup. Instead of the video buffer being a regular like 16:9 image, my video buffer is going to be 3 times the length. So let's click back on this tab. I'm going to delete this because I don't need this final output right now. And let's say that my square is actually this thing that's stretched across a very large source. So now I'm doing what we would want to call is multi-projector projection mapping. And it's going to get a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go into detail because it's best to show you with actual projectors. But if you are curious, ask, and who knows, maybe I'll make a tutorial on it. So I'm going to choose this one, and this one will be projector 1. Projector 1, and I will set the source to be the video buffer layer, right? And I'm just going to take it and guesstimate about 1/3 of the size of it. So let's say it's about here. I could go down to the input settings. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty close to 1920 by 1080, so that's good enough. And I'm going to drag that down to my first projector and do it here. And then we'll do that again, sort of taking this middle part. I have snap enabled, so it's being a little tricky. And then we'll do that one more time, and we'll take it and call it our 3rd projector. So right now I have essentially the same content that is going through the video buffer, but I have it stitched across 3 different projectors. And when you get into multiple projector blending, it might have something like we'll add an internal mask to it. I'll add something like this, and I'll complete that, and then I'll have some sort of like feathering around the edge. Then the other side will have something similar. Let's go here and here and here and here, and we'll feather that again. So now maybe these 2 projectors, projector 1 and 2, this is 2, and this is 3. So when you're looking at this as like an audience member, you now have these projectors, and they're being blended together. So this content looks like it's seamlessly going from one to the next. You'll just have to take my word for it. I'm going to start by deleting these scenes and cues. I don't want to accidentally, mainly the scenes, I don't want to accidentally trigger that again because it'll reconfigure output, but I'm going to create a new scene. And this will be the 3 projector version. So the same thing applies. If I want, I can use cues to update the content, right? And so that one's getting me into trouble. So I'm going to go back to here, which is that scene that I saved. I'm going to click on these squares, and I'm going to add some new content, and I'll make that a cue. Let's go here and add some new content, make that a cue. Let's go here, make some new content, and add a cue. All right, so I have that same scene. I now use that video buffer, and I'm using cues this time to change the content. And if you're curious, or if you've never seen it before, you can just add fades to make these transitions a little bit smoother. So this would be like a 3-second fade, and 3-second, and the long 5-second fade. So if you're working on a project and you are going to use multiple projectors, or maybe you're doing projection mapping along the face or the facade of a building, and it requires 3 or more projectors, using that video buffer layer as an intermediary layer is going to make it so that you don't have to touch whatever you do in your final output mapping. So, and for instance, in most use cases, maybe I can mock up something like this at my house, and then I get on site and I say, oh, I actually need to come in here and enable mesh warping, and I'll generate a grid, and I'll click apply, and this point needs to come over here. This needs to go like that. This isn't there. Maybe I need to apply some sort of masks or something like that. Additionally to this layer, I can do that on one layer, and then whenever I start to update the content across all of them, I don't have to worry about redoing that output geometry. And like I said, if you always want, you right click, copy the output geometry, and then in another layer, for example, you could in theory paste it, although I don't know why you'd want to. So I hope this tutorial is useful or answered some of your questions on video buffers. If you go into outputs, you also see that there's a laser buffer. It's pretty much the same thing applies. This way you could route media through, you could add essentially your own types of delays to it or effects to it using some of the other effects that are inside of MadMapper surfaces. And yeah, you can also use this to blend various layers that don't seem like they're doing a good job of blending if you really wanted to. So video buffers are very powerful and they're built into MadMapper 6. And if you need to recreate the same effect in MadMapper 5, once again, you just click on create a new projector. You make sure that the destination is set to none, and then you make sure that publish internal loopback is enabled. And in MadMapper 5, right here, you could just add a couple frame delay if you really wanted to. So very powerful, and I hope this helps you in the future with your multiple projector or even your next projection mapping project. And if you're curious about me, I'm at ProjectileObjects. My website is ProjectileObjects.com. I'm also listed as a MadMapper certified trainer. And you can find me on Instagram at ProjectileObjects. And once again, if you have any questions or other things that you want to learn from this video or MadMapper, VDMX, or more, just feel free to leave them in the comments or send me a message. All right, thank you again.